Okay, in this lesson, we are going to learn how to factor trinomials in a method that I still remember learning in like middle school or high school or something. So maybe this isn't something that you've seen before. I know that a lot of teachers teach factoring in different ways, but this is something that I learned and has still stuck with me, and this is still how I factor. So, that is going to be the way that I teach it. So that being said, 1A before 11:19, you need to watch this. 2 before 11:20, 6.6, factoring trinomials, and our objectives are to factor trinomials in the form x squared plus bx plus c and ax squared plus bx plus c. So part 1, factor trinomials in the form x squared plus bx plus c. And to do this, we're going to use something that's called the x method, okay? So what is the x method? Well, surprisingly, it involves drawing an x. So, for example, number 1, if we are asked to factor the following trinomials, we have x squared plus 10x plus 16, okay? We're going to draw a nice big x. In the top of the x, we are going to put this coefficient times this one, okay? So the coefficient of your x squared terms times your last term. So in this case, we have 1 times 16 is equal to 16. So that's what we're going to put in the top. In the bottom of the x, we're going to put this middle coefficient. So whatever number comes in front of your x. So in this case, it's going to be 10. And then on the sides of the x, we want two numbers that multiply to the top number, so that multiply to get 16 and that add to 10. So things that I'm thinking about. Okay, how do I get to 16? 1 times 16, that will never add to 10. 2 times 8, 2 plus 8 is 10. That was easy. 2, 8, because 2 times 8 is equal to 16. 2 plus 8 is equal to 10. And then from there, to write this in a factored form, I'm going to put x plus 2 times x plus 8. And that's literally it. This was a very kind of straightforward example. We got our factors nice and easy, but they will get a little bit more complicated. But this is just to kind of get the x method down. And if we want to check our answer, we can again FOIL it out. X squared plus 8x plus 2x plus 16 is equal to x squared plus 10x plus 16, which is what we started with. So let's do another one. We have x squared minus 12x plus 35. So we're going to draw our x. In the top, we put this coefficient times our last number. 1 times 35 gives us 35. In the bottom, we put this middle guy, middle coefficient of x. That's going to be negative 12. So now, since we have a negative number in the bottom, we know that one of our numbers, since we have a negative number in the bottom, and we have a positive number on the top, we know that there's going to be some negative signs floating around here. So let's start thinking about this. So we have 1 times 35. That will never get us to 12. We have 2 times nothing, 3 times nothing, 4 times nothing, 5 times 7. Well, 5 times 7 is equal to 35, and 5 plus 7 is equal to positive 12. But we want it to be negative 12. So then you're going to think to yourself, okay, 5 and 7 are my numbers, and I need to get to positive 35 by multiplying and negative 12 by adding. So if I do negative 7 times negative 5, a negative times a negative will give me a positive 35, and a negative plus a negative will give me a negative 12. So my numbers are going to be negative 7 and negative 5. And then to write that in my factored form, I will have x minus 7 times x minus 5. That's my final answer. All right, let's do one more. We have 5x cubed minus 30x squared minus 35x. Well, this one looks a little different. So the first thing we want to do with this one is we want to look at it and we want to make it easier for ourselves, because it's all about making our lives easier. And so in order to do that, I can think to myself, 5, 30, 35, all factors of 5. I can factor out a greatest common factor. And further, I don't just have a numerical greatest common factor, I have a variable greatest common factor too, because I have x's in all of my terms. So in fact, I can factor out a 5x. And that leaves me with x squared minus 6x minus 7. Okay, and so now this is the trinomial that I now want to factor. So I'm going to draw my x, and I'm going to think to myself, okay, I'm going to have 1 times negative 7, which gives me negative 7. And then down here, I'm going to have my coefficient of x, negative 6. So I want something that multiplies to negative 7 and adds to negative 6. Well, 7's a prime number. So the only things that multiply to 7 are 7 times 1. But it needs to be a negative 7 and a negative 6. So if I make this 7 negative, negative 7 times positive 1 equals negative 7. And negative 7 plus 1 equals negative 6. So I fulfilled my x. Everything is good to go. And now I can write the factored form of this answer as 5x, which I factored out initially, times x minus 7 times x plus 1. Final answer. All right. And now we're going to shake things up a little and make it a little more difficult. Part 2 is factoring trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and we're still going to use our x method, but we are going to make it we're going to use it differently, a little bit differently. Okay, so example 1, we have 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. So I'm going to draw my x. And now in my top, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to have this number times this number. Okay. In the previous examples up here, since all of our trinomials are in the form x squared, there's no a, there's no coefficient to our x squared. Our x's for these types of trinomials are always going to be 1 times c. For this type of trinomial where we have ax squared plus bx plus c, where our x squared term does have a coefficient, in the top of our x, we're going to put a times c. So 2 times 15 in this case, which is equal to 30. And then in our bottom one, we're again going to put the coefficient of our x term, this middle one, 11. And now we are once again looking for two numbers that multiply to our top and add to our bottom. So let's think about 30. We have 1 times 30, that won't add to 11. 2 times 15, that won't add to 11. 3 times 10, that won't add to 11. 4 times nothing. 5 times 6 will add to 11, right? So 5 and 6. But here's the weird step of these types of problems. You're not done here. You need to remember to divide each of your numbers by this a term right here. So I'm going to have 5 divided by 2 and 6 divided by 2. Okay? 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. So that part simplifies. 5 over 2 doesn't simplify to anything. Okay? And now to write my factors, I'm going to do something kind of odd. So over here I have a 3. So this factor is just going to be x plus 3. No biggie. Over here though, I have 5 halves. And so the way that we write this factor is going to be the number on the bottom, which in this case is 2, times x plus the number on the top, which is 5. So the way that I would write this factor right here is 2x plus 5. So it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be the number on the bottom times x plus the number on top. Okay, so 5 over 2 becomes 2x plus 5. And then our other factor is 6 divided by 2, which simplifies to 3. So that one's just x plus 3. Okay, so I know this one's a little bit less intuitive, but with practice, you will get it down like a champion. So let's do another example. We have 3x squared minus x minus 4. All right, so we're going to draw our x. In the top, we're going to have 3 times negative 4, which gives us negative 12. In the bottom, we're going to have negative 1. Okay, and now we want to think of numbers that multiply to 12 and negative 12 and add to negative 1. So negative 12 times 1, that won't add to 1. 2 times 6, that won't add to 1. 3 times 4, that seems promising. So if I have 3 times 4, and I want a negative 12 and a negative 1, I'm going to have 3 times negative 4. because 3 times -4 will equal -12, and 3 plus -4 will leave me with -1. And then from there, I'm going to divide by my a. So in this case, my a is 3. So 3 divided by 3, -4 divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 simplifies to 1. And so this factor is just going to be x plus 1. And then over here, I have -4/3. So again, this factor is going to become my denominator, 3, times x plus my numerator. So plus -4 would be just -4. So this factor becomes 3x minus 4. And that is my answer for that guy. Remember, when you have an a, when you have something ax squared, so you have a coefficient to your x squared term, you can use the x method exactly the same, except for you have to remember at the end to divide by that a and then to write your factor correctly, right? So -4/3 becomes 3x minus 4. Denominator times x plus numerator. All right, one more example here. We have 6x squared plus 13x plus 6. We're going to draw our x. In the top of our x, we are going to have 6 times 6, which is 36. In the bottom of our x, we have the coefficient of x, which is 13. And now we are searching for two numbers that multiply to 36 and add to 13. So 1 times 36, no. 2 times 18? Yeah, 2 times 18, nope. 3 times 12, 24, 36, yeah. You guys are really seeing my mental math stretch to its capacity right here. 3 times 12 won't work. 4 times 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 22, 24, 28, 32, 36. 4 times 9, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 4 times 9 works. So I don't want to hear that you don't need your calculator, or maybe you just need to work on your times tables. But if I just pulled that one out, then I believe in you guys to pull them out too. So 4 times 9 is 36. 4 plus 9 is 13. And then last thing you need to remember is divide by your a term. So divided by 6, divided by 6. 4 over 6 simplifies to 2 over 3. 9 over 6 simplifies to 3 over 2. Okay, and so now both of my factors are going to be written kind of weirdly, right? So over here, again, I'm going to have my denominator, 3, times x plus my numerator. And over here, it's going to be the same thing. My denominator, 2 times x plus my numerator. Great. So the factored form of 6x squared plus 13x plus 6 is 3x plus 2 times 2x plus 3. And if you doubt that, you can FOIL it out to check your work. And that is a beautiful thing about FOILing, is that about factoring, is that you can always check by FOIL. So that is factoring. That is 6.6. Basically all it takes is a bunch of practice. So that is what you'll be doing for homework, is a bunch of practice. And if you have questions, we will continue to go over this in class. Yeah, and that's all I got. Enjoy learning how to factor with the X method.